Hello everyone. Alon has asked me to say a few words again. I was just looking at this Medical Journal of Australia front sheet, which talks about the untreatable infections, the post-antibiotic era. And I've been in medicine for almost 40 years now, and I must say it was a really exciting time when I first joined, first started medicine, and we were confronted with a lot of infectious diseases. And certainly my perception was, and the perception of many of my colleagues, that vaccines do have a place. That was our experience.
Cheers.
Sometime back earlier in my career, I worked in the northeastern Transvaal and in eastern Pondoland in South Africa, in apartheid South Africa. And in 1983, some of you may recall, we had these terrible droughts in New South Wales and bushfires. And during that year, when I was looking after mainly the maternal and child health at Holy Cross Hospital in Flagstaff in eastern Pondoland, our under 5 mortality rate was 300 per thousand. 300 per thousand children died before the age of 5 years. And a lot of those children were knocked out by measles. So when measles came through, we were petrified of measles. It was a really nasty business. So where you've got lack of water, lack of sanitation, malnutrition, measles is a vicious disease, quite cruel. And then, of course, the kid gets knocked over, the nutrition goes even further down, the child gets secondary tuberculosis or picks up tuberculosis because the immunity is knocked out, and then often you bury that child. So far as twins went, in that population group, if there were twins, almost always, unless one twin died early, both twins died, because having a twin was almost a death sentence in that community. When one reads about, I had measles as a child, and for us measles wasn't such a big kid. So I was born in 54, we all had measles as children, most of us got through it. I'm not sure of the precise case encephalitis rate in measles in the time that I was growing up, but it might have been 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 2,000 or whatever. And also there's about 1 in 15, 1 in 25,000 children who got subacute sclerosing panencephalitis. Quite a nasty form of slow encephalitis, which has a higher fatality rate 10 years later. So they're all realities about what the risks of those diseases are. When you look at the case fatality rates from the United States and what was happening then, good data from the States, the case fatality rate for measles in 55 was 0.2 to 0.4 per 100,000. So 2 to 4 per million children died of measles, from the acute measles. And then there was other stuff going on as well. So I don't want to dismiss that in any way. But by the same token, as I shared with you this morning, there's no question now that the MMR vaccine seems to be strongly associated with autism.
Yes.
And that very good research from Japan points the finger very strongly that something's going on here. So we haven't fully teased this out. And I think one of the problems we have with population health and public health in this country is the orientation is very much towards the medical practitioners and what they do. It's not community orientated. We're not looking at the health outcomes on the ground. So we're looking at vaccination rates, when, as Judy was saying earlier on, we're not looking at health outcomes. So when you go to your doctor, most of us de facto have an ID number. That ID number is your Medicare number. And that number, I'm sure, can be accessed by the drug companies because they seem to know what I prescribe. So, for instance, when you go to your doctor, he might order some pathology, he might order some radiology, and your ID is attached to that. That's your Medicare number. And when you're prescribed a drug, your ID is attached to that. But we're not really looking at what is actually happening on the ground. And a lot of the earlier research from the 1940s, 1950s was much more honest research because it wasn't as influenced by the pharmaceutical industries. The problem we see now is it's very much, as I said, geared towards, it's as if a lot more people are going to a general practitioner, that's a good thing. No, that's not a good thing. If a lot more people are accessing general practice, why are they going there? It seems as though in this country, we have one of the highest antibiotic prescribing rates in the world. 400, 1200% higher than some other countries. And what this is doing is damaging our microbiome, and we're beginning to appreciate now that the bacteria that sometimes we've been so fearful of is very important for our evolving immunity. And the microbiome we see in our nasopharynx, it's in our gut, in our lungs, in our genital system, in our ear holes, it's everywhere. And it forms a vital part of negotiating a healthy relationship with our environment. And as we erode that microbiome, we do damage to our evolving immunity. And certainly, you'll hear every so often of terrible cases of meningitis where a child dies. And meningitis is a terrible disease, and I've dealt with many kids with meningitis. Earlier in my career, penicillin was such a wonderful drug. A shot of penicillin, bang, you'd wipe it out. If you got in early enough, penicillin was just enough to wipe out your meningitis. We're increasingly getting more difficult case of meningitis to treat. So as we vaccinated for meningococcus C and now B, we're pushing the spectrum of harmful meningococcus towards a more virulent strain. So W we're seeing now, which I call wicked meningococcus. So as we're getting rid of the benign forms of Neisseria meningitis, we're getting more virulent forms. And certainly I think if the mother's able to breastfeed early and nurture the natural Neisseria, her nasopharynx, that natural Neisseria provides a healthy microbiome in the upper airway and is protective. When we hear about children catching meningitis, often they say, well, you've got to go and give the vaccine. What you won't hear is that where there's a smoker in the household, the child mortality rate be 4 to 20-fold increased mortality in the child where there's a smoker. So environmental factors matter. So I think that public health is now very much geared towards a selective drug approach, very much so. There are caveats to that. The lead abatement program, fantastic, has made a big difference, but we're too controlled in public health by the pharmaceutical industry, and we're not really looking at the environment and populations in their natural settings. Thank you guys
for all of your support. So we're still going, not going to stop. Share the video, spread the word. These are the front lines of our fight for freedom right here.
They, like you, would probably try to do the right thing. We're better off engaging with people in conversation rather than debate. I know we do need the debates, but the thing is, look, everybody has their story and their perceptions, and they have some legitimacy. The whole system is too skewed towards medical interventions. We need to focus on nurturing natural health with the natural lifestyle, and that's what we need to do. So thank you all, and thank you, Alona, for allowing me to have a bit more of a chat. Thank you.